Welcome back to the Sandwich Generation Pod. I'm Robin.
And I'm Eliesa.
And today's episode is one that feels very personal. We're talking about being an only child while caregiving.
That's right. No built-in team, no sibling group chat, and I can speak from experience on this one.
Just you holding a lot.
And if you're listening and you feel like everything lands on your shoulders, this one is for you.
We're also joined by a very special friend of mine, Melissa Del Rosario. She has many credentials, but her most important credential here is a longtime friend of mine, and she's an only. She's going to help us unpack what it means to navigate caregiving, grief, and family dynamics as an only.
Melissa, we are so glad you're here.
Let's get into it. I am so excited to have this very special lady on the pod today. I know that we had a sibling episode where my sister and I talked a lot. Eliesa is an only, and I thought today we would want to hear from her about what it's like to do sandwich generation as an only, taking care of your parents on your own. We also wanted another perspective, so the first person I thought of who I love so much is my dear friend, Melissa Del Rosario. Okay, so a little background on me and Mel. Mel and I have known each other since we were 12. We met at camp.
I love that.
So we went to high school together. We are currently very, very close. Melissa is one of those people in life that is somewhere between a cousin, a sister, a soul sister. She really is like family. She knew my parents growing up. I knew her parents. She saw me get drunk for the first time, and she saw my dad's reaction to that because I was at her house. She has seen me get married. I've seen her get married. We've been raising our children together. I've just watched Melissa turn into such an incredible human. She always was, but she just gets better with time. And she's really kind of a hero to me also. And I just love the idea that our friends are also our heroes. You know that you have a really good friendship when you look up to the person. Melissa and I are never at a loss for words. So we're going to try to not gab away. Good thing there's editing.
I love this, and I can't wait to hear your story about being an only too, because it's a very specific place in the sandwich generation when you are the only child caregiving for your children and your parents, isn't it?
It is, yes. It has been quite an adventuresome last couple of years as I am learning to navigate that more and more.
And I thought it might be helpful to sort of have a starting point for your journey, Mel, so people know a little bit about you, which is, it's a heavy beginning, but can you talk a little bit about what happened with your dad and just give us a little bit of background on you and how things have been the last couple of years?
Yes, and thank you all so much for having me, and thank you for talking about the perspective of only children. I'm also a parent of an only child, and it's been really interesting. The rhetoric, I think, always leans negative when it comes to only children. It seems to be not highlighted that there are positives and negatives to every situation. And so I appreciate that, you are getting that perspective into this. So thanks. And right back at you for admiration. I'm an only child. We were a very solid family of three that each traditional, mom, dad, daughter. Parents were married for over 50 years. They were very codependent. They started dating their senior year of high school. They got married at 19 and had me at 27. And we were just kind of a solid three. I got married in 2014, and my husband definitely got into the fold. And so it kind of became the four of us. And my dad definitely called my husband Devin his son, definitely looked at my husband as his second child for sure. And then my husband and I had our daughter Peyton in 2016. And so then we kind of grew it a little bit more and kind of became a posse of five. We've traveled together. We would do dinners together. And then in August of 2023, I was actually with Robin, and we were having Shabbat dinner at Robin's house, and my phone kept buzzing from my mom. And so when Robin talks about we've been through everything together, we do seem to always be at the moments with each other. The universe just seems to cross paths that way. So I was standing in Robin's kitchen, and my phone kept buzzing in my pocket, and I kept clicking my mom off. And then my husband Devin's phone rings, and it's my mom. And I take it, and the rest is history. My dad had gotten admitted to the hospital. She said something didn't feel quite right. It seemed different. So I ended up actually taking a Lyft ride from Robin's house to the hospital, and proceeded to have a very intense next 8 days where my dad had gone into cardiac arrest, and making the decision whether or not to take him off life support, which we did end up deciding to do the following Thursday. So in the period of 7 days, we went from kind of being a traditional, the way our family had always looked, to then navigating every step that you guys have talked about. Because, we did not have cemetery plots. My dad just turned 71.
Yeah.
2 days earlier, he had biked all 3 of the lakes in the city. And things just turned very quickly. And so my role in an instant became very changed, because when I left Robin's house that night, Friday night, I'm like, oh, my mom and dad are fine, clicking off my phone in Robin's kitchen. And then 12 hours later, I'm sitting out on my back deck with my cousin, having a conversation with her away from my daughter about how do I plan a funeral, because my mom wouldn't be capable of it. Ended up just calling my synagogue, because on a Saturday, which they're closed on Shabbat, because I just didn't, in 12 hours, it completely switched, where all of a sudden I was having to make decisions where I had really just looked at them as a team of 2 doing their thing. So, and that was August of 2023. And so the
Okay.
last 2.5 years has been a dramatic shift in, our 3 going down to 2, and where does my husband fit, and how do we travel, and how do I take care of my mom? Because, she never lived on her own before. So it has been a very steep and quick learning curve over the last 2.5 years.
The whiplash, we use that word quite a bit, whiplash, that happens when this moment arrives. And for you, not only was there whiplash from, leaving your friend's house and then going to the hospital, but then realizing, okay, this is life and death right now. And the whiplash of parenting and grieving. And there's so many instances, I feel like, in which that word fits. And when you're an only, I find at least that you're the one in the center of it all,
I happen to just be privileged to the information too of what actually transpired at the hospital, because Melissa and I have talked a lot about this. Melissa's been with me on the journey with my parents, and she shared some of these things with me, but I feel like it's apropos to this conversation. Can you tell us what it was like with you and your mom, the dynamic and the decisions that you were facing in those short hours, and what that was like?
Yeah. So I had never really taken part in my parents' healthcare decisions. I definitely had to work on boundary setting when I chose to move back to Minneapolis. And because we were such a dynamic of 3, when I moved back and kind of was starting my adult life in my late 20s, I had to spend quite a bit of time kind of we are not a unit of 3 anymore. You have your life and I am building my own adult life. And then, add in then getting married and then having a kid and then buying a house. And so I had spent years very much kind of setting boundaries for, I'd say, my own, health and theirs, and our dynamic of what is your life and what is mine. And so I really wasn't engaging as much in their healthcare decisions, because I just was you manage your things. You'll tell me when you have something that comes up. And it became very evident the next day that we didn't know if he was brain dead. We didn't know how much activity there was. He had had a cardiac arrest incident. And so they didn't know, when he'd lost oxygen to his brain, how much, how reactive and engaging he was going to be and what would transpire after that. And so all of a sudden, a boundary that I think I'd worked so hard over the last 15 years to establish very quickly became I need to have a voice in this, because these are decisions that I need to live with for the rest of my life. And we were not in agreement. My mom and I did not necessarily see things eye to eye about when to make the life and death decisions. And I don't know if anyone has experienced being in ICU with anyone, and I hope you don't. It is not a
I
very
have.
pleasurable. Okay.
Yeah.
It is not a very pleasurable experience. And I did not have any context of this until I experienced it myself, that there is a push and pull between quantity and quality of life that is not clear. And the lines are not clear about where the line is and when you extend life and when you don't extend life. And so when those lines were not clear, it became evident that this boundary that I had set so clearly of like, you guys do your thing, you have your health situations, you make your decisions, that like I might need to have some input into this. And that got really touchy in the ICU room.
Meaning,
We didn't agree on when and if the decision would be to take him off life support. That was not a clear-cut decision.
you and your mom.
Me
You
and
and
my
your
mom.
mom.
So it was just me and it's just me and my mom, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean,
Yep.
and this is where you talk about pros and cons. Like, it's just the two of us. There's not a
Yep.
team of people making these decisions, right? And so it got heated to the point that they actually had to call in a social worker to kind of step in between us.
Yep.
Because they said we were agitating the patients in the ICU room, which is like, ICU is like very quiet,
Right.
very serious. And like, I actually ended up throwing something across the room.
I thought so. I'm like, wait, didn't someone
No,
threw
I did.
something?
I threw something. I ended up throwing something across the room. I ended up on my hands and
That'll
knees,
do
like
it.
yelling at her. So
You
it
look like
got
a very
heated.
nice person, but when you have to defend someone's life, you'll get down on your hands and knees and throw something. We all
Well, and
would.
I think, to be honest, it wasn't about defending life. I think it was this like realization that this is not something you get a second chance at. Like,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
can't be like, ooh, I pulled the plug too early. Oops. You don't
Yeah.
get to like redo it, And like,
Do you
this is
think
a
at that
decision I
time you were
wanted to be.
waiting for like more information? Were you waiting on more tests? Like, were you hoping and praying that things would be okay? Or, what made that decision difficult?
So I think this is an interesting, I think, only child dynamic is like, my parents had a thing for 55 years, right? Unspoken languages and, discussion. I mean, they had lived completely interdependently. And, my mom was like, I can just tell that he wouldn't want this. And I appreciate that. But like, this is a time where I do need to interject and I do need to step in because I need to understand that, right? Like, you have your dynamic, but I need to live with this decision, right? Talk about like a heavy decision. And,
Yeah.
I did not understand, luckily, how ICU works and that it is not a clear cut, like, this is when you decide that you are going to end providing life support. It is not a clear cut at all. And there is a lot of ambiguity and there is a lot of differing opinions. I mean, we even had doctors overnight change orders that we had made because doctors were disagreeing with each other about what next steps to take. And I need to feel like I stand by my decision.
When you're an only child, you are independent also, right? So when you are the child, you're raised to take care of yourself in a way that is different, I think, than when you have siblings. And it's not that you're selfish and it's not that you're lonely, but you're just like your own person within the family and within the family unit. So it's like your parents have each other. You're right. They do have this dynamic, and then it's you. And so I think only children grow up to be so strong and they grow up to be independent in different ways. And so it makes a lot of sense to me when you're saying that you kind of came into the situation where, like, hold on, I need to understand and make decisions, where I think maybe sometimes if you have a sibling dynamic, people kind of pass the buck along a little bit. And as an only child, you come in and you just know that you have to step up. I think that feeling of being raised with always being independent is something that only children have. I think it's a superpower. Do kids need siblings? No, they don't. Only children are great. They're spectacular. You've had to figure out the world on your own from a very young age when you're an only child. And that kind of always sticks with us, I guess is what I'm saying.
And that's how it had been. And I had worked really hard, and Robin can attest to this. Like, there was periods in our relationship where I had worked really hard to set clear boundaries because I felt like at a certain point, it kind of became a meshment where, like, where is their lives and where is me becoming my own individual?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, overnight, that boundary that I had set and worked so hard for and spent a lot of money in therapy about to like have that boundary and like be clear about it. All of a sudden I was like, well, wait, this is literally a life or death situation that I can't just have a clear boundary about and just say, okay, you handle that. Like I need to make sure that this is a decision that I also can feel good about, right? Like when to pull the plug on your dad. Like that's like not a
That's
Well,
so
decision that
huge.
you don't want to be like, oops,
Yeah.
I wish I would have. Like that's not I wish I would have.
I also think what's so interesting is you are the only voice of that representation. You are the representation from the child's perspective. And I've never realized that, but listening to both of you, like there is something about having a sounding board that is my sibling rather than the sounding board that is my parent. Cause like my sister and I tag team all the time and we have a lot of conversations about like, what do you think? What do you think? And if I were having those conversations with my dad, it would be like a completely different ballgame, and I might not even have them with my dad. And so not having someone who's a sounding board, that's like a very different pathway to making decisions. And to say there's pressure is an understatement.
Yeah, I feel a lot of pressure sometimes. I also feel a lot of responsibility. And I also absolutely agree with you, Melissa, that I feel like I want to make sure at the end of the day that I am making decisions that I am happy with or I can have peace with. And that has required me to put a lot of frankly personal opinions aside to operate as like a neutral party in a way, whether that's between my parents or in the health decisions or like making sure that their wishes are carried out. But yeah, it's complicated, I guess is a good word
I
for it.
I do want to talk about what it has been like. I know as an observer, your dynamic with your dad was very close, and your dad was a very special person to me. And there is a loss of him in your life, then there's also the loss of him in the dynamic itself. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it's been like moving forward without him and your dynamic with your mom. Because I think there are a lot of people out there that can relate to that, that are an only, that have had to navigate moving forward with a parent relationship that might have been eased by the other parent who is now gone.
And I will say, I don't think there's enough people talking about that because the hardest thing that I actually had to navigate after my dad dying was the relationship with my mom. And there was a significant period of time that I felt like I had lost both parents
Sure.
instantly. And I read every grief book that was handed to me. I participated in 2 different grief like seminars, and I kept trying to ask people about the reshifting of relationships when someone dies, and there doesn't seem to be a lot on that. And I think, to be honest, we are still working on 2.5 years later. My husband really doesn't know where he fits. And a perfect example, we took a ski trip every spring, the 5 of us, and my mom still likes to go to the mountains, but she doesn't like to go without my dad. So we did a trip last year for the first year and took her with, and it just was, was fine, but it was kind of an awkward dynamic. And so now just me, my husband, and my daughter are going. The way I have phrased it is we were a 3-legged stool, and in an instant, it became a 2-legged stool that was really unstable. And it's, just the 2 of us. And so you have this balancing act of feeling a sense of responsibility. I will never take the place of my dad, but I also, want to do what he would have wanted me to do in terms of caretaking for her, making sure that she is in a good place, while also my own boundaries, my own life. And so we literally rebuilt our relationship like from the beginning. Like we had to start over basically. So we actually didn't speak for several months. She basically just pieced out. So I'm Jewish, and in the Jewish tradition, you take a year. The mourning process in the beginning is considered a year-long process. And it really was a year. Looking back, a lot of people have been like, that's why they call it a year. But in my head, it felt like forever. Like she literally just like in her grief just checked out. And so I lost my mom and my dad both in an instant. And my daughter lost her grandparents both in an instant, which was incredibly hard because not only am I an only daughter, but I also have an only daughter. And she lost both of them. And so we really didn't speak for about 6 months. She just didn't, like refuse to come to things, um, wouldn't really engage. I planned a trip for all of us to go together, thinking that if we left, maybe we could start rebuilding. So we went to California for 5 days, and it was awful. And I think Devin came, my husband, and we didn't realize at that point how much his relationship with my dad was part of that dynamic of the five of us. And like, he felt really lost. And so then my mom felt like an outsider because it was like me and my husband with her. And I think my daughter Peyton didn't know where to go. And so the trip didn't go well. It went months without speaking because her grief was so overwhelming that she just kind of hibernated, basically. And
Yeah.
so I kind of navigated all of it on my own. So we took him off life support. Actually, my rabbi likes to say we liberated him, which I think is a very nice way
I
to say
like
it.
that. Yeah.
I do too. So he was liberated August 31st of 2023. And that spring, so it was like February, March. So, I mean, 6 months. My mom called and asked if me and Peyton, my daughter, would like to do a girls' trip with her over our spring break. And the three of us went to Arizona, and we went to a resort that had like kids' activities so that my only child had like kid activities to do. And we had lots of time to just talk and like kind of rebuild a relationship. And it looks really different. Like, our relationship is not at all what it was when my dad was around. You know, like, I definitely, I am her person. And it is very clear that like I kind of feel more voice and more liberation to state my boundaries and state what I need.
Mhm.
Whereas before I was like, you know, it was like sometimes could be 2 against 1. And I didn't want to like say something where, you know, my dad was going to get caught in the middle between me and my mom, or it was going to be my mom and dad against me or whatever. And I'm her person now. We literally rebuilt what the two of us look like.
Even though it's different, does it feel good? Like, do you feel close in a way that you were hoping for, or does it still feel tricky?
I would say the closeness is different because I think I feel pretty much split 50-50. Like, to be honest, I feel a little bit like she's another one of my kids. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, it is not burdensome at all. She was a really wonderful mother and has been. She's a wonderful grandmother to my daughter. I mean, she's a very involved grandparent and is definitely present and there. But I do feel a sense of responsibility where I reflect often at night in a day where she is one of the dependents that I'm taking care of, right? So when my dad was alive, it didn't feel as much that way though, because they were so codependent. They really had each other. And so I did not feel that as an only child.
I use this word, codependent, a lot because my parents, if everyone is healthy, they are totally, perfectly independent in their codependency. They have found ways to take care of each other, to help each other. They found systems like emotionally and physically. But when one of them goes down, it's like the system is broken, right? The leg falls off the chair. And then all of a sudden, you see all the gaps in which the parent who is not sick needs your help in all of these ways. That's been one of the most interesting things. And it could be something really physical, like toileting that they help each other with. It could be something as simple as like how to literally get out of their door of their apartment. It could be groceries or snacks that they get at a certain times or medication. But then it's also the emotional part of it and how they support each other. And when that person is gone, like, of course, there's loneliness, but there's also a dependency that they have on one another. And like you're saying, their language and their little isms. And I do believe that all parents have that, right? So all families see that if their parents are together. But it is different when you're an only child and they have for so long worked as a couple.
Well, also, it's interesting listening to you guys because, again, it's not as in plain sight when you have siblings because your parents have their dependencies, but when the system breaks down, they might be revealing different parts of the breakdown to you and then different parts to your sibling. Like maybe one sibling is hearing the emotional stuff and another sibling is hearing the mechanical stuff. But in your case, it's like a shortcut to it reveals itself very quickly because there is nowhere to go. I feel like that's exactly what I keep hearing is like, there's nowhere to go. You cannot hide from the gaps. You cannot hide from not knowing your place. Like there's nobody to soften the blow around you. And, you know, I was thinking like, well, if there were like 5 siblings in a family, I've heard people say like, oh, there's 5 of us. So we all take care of our parents. You know, it's like, it's a very different experience. Like You are it for the emotional support. I think it's also really interesting that you mentioned your parents' dynamic, and your dad was a caretaker. He had a very caring, loving nature, and he had a huge capacity to care for other people. He had a huge capacity to solve other people's problems, to make them feel loved, just to care for them. And I think your mom hugely benefited from that. Your mom is also very caring. And your mom has been so caring actually in this moment in her life. It's so interesting. Like she's almost stepped into my life and put a lot of her caretaking abilities and love into my life, which is a separate conversation. But she, benefited from your dad's ability to do that. And so did you. Losing parents, not all are created equal, right? Losing one parent versus another, very different. They brought very different things to the dynamic. But again, you have nowhere to go. When you lose that in your dynamic of three, that is prepare for impact. And like we have to reconfigure because we can't keep going the way we were. It's so broken that your mom couldn't even be in the equation for 6 months. It's like she almost had to think about like, how do I approach this next? Where is my place? What do I say? Who do I be? Like how do I lean on my daughter? Can I do that?
I mean, I can't imagine a sudden health event like that, and how quickly it just, yeah, like changes everything, like you said, overnight. And the amount of time to process for you all must have taken a long time.
And I think to Robin's point, there wasn't anybody else. And all of a sudden, her teammate and her ally was gone overnight. And I think there was a lot of disorientation for her because I still have mine. Like, I think in her mind, it was like, well, it's me and my husband and her husband. And all of a sudden, the dynamics of the two and two changed and she had no idea where she fits. And I think she still is struggling with that. I think we have tried different ways to make the structure fit, and none of it has been quite right yet.
Yeah.
Right. I
Well, I
think the key
commend you
is
for
yet.
trying to find your way.
And it's hard to like recognize the progress, but I do see like a lot of amazing progress. Okay, I'm not an only, but I am learning so much. And if you have a good friend or someone you know who's an only and going through this journey with them, please share this with them. Hit the share button. I wanted to ask you too about how you are dealing with, I think there's so much guilt for all of us in this situation. I think we talk about this a lot. Guilt is a huge part of this journey. It's like you feel like you can never be there enough for your parents and you can never divvy up your time the right way. And being sandwiched, you're responsible for so many things. How do you protect yourself from the guilt and protect your own life, knowing that you are your mom's person and you are very much her way to plug into the outside life? It's your grandchild that's going to bring her the happiness. Like you are such an outlet in every which way for her. It's like, how do you make sure to still live your own life?
It's funny. I feel like I think every night I reflect. It's like 9:30, and I like lay in bed and I'm like, okay, how did I balance this out today? Right. Because
We were
there's
just talking about this.
it's like I think through it because, I also like to have a career and that means something to me. And my marriage means something to me. And being a mom means something to me. And being a daughter and being a friend. I am the only one in all of those, right? Like I am the only wife. I am the only mom. I am the only daughter, right? Like there is no one else in all of those categories. And I also want to make sure that I am, being healthy myself and like taking care of myself. Because as we know, if you can't give from an empty vessel, and I feel like every night I think, like reflect on it and I'm like, how did today go? And,
Yep.
I'd say every day there's like things that I wish I could do better and things that I feel like I set kind of a goal for the next day that's like, well, my husband didn't get enough attention today. So that's going to be my goal for tomorrow. And then, like, maybe the next day, I'm like, God, like, I really didn't feel like I got time with my daughter today. And so, I need to make a point to like make sure that she's getting my focus today. And then if a few days goes by and I feel like I haven't talked to my mom and I know like I'm the person, right? Okay, you know what? Maybe I need to call her and see if she wants to go out to lunch today. I feel like it's kind of who is it that feels like they maybe aren't getting right? Like which one?
I
How do
mean,
you
same kind of
protect
thing where you're kind of reconciling, like, okay, did everyone
get a piece of
get
me?
a piece of me today? I think the thing that I've had to do very much in these caregiving years is set boundaries. Otherwise, I would go crazy. And it's been a little tricky sometimes. It hasn't been perfect. My parents, I think, can sometimes take offense to those boundaries because they feel like I'm, keeping them at arm's length or something. And that is absolutely not the case. I think in being an only child, there's so much work and like mental load that they don't see. It's the phone calls, it's the financial stuff, and, like, I'm getting into a better groove with it all now, but I feel like I'm doing something for them every day, whether they see it or not, but they're looking at like, "Well, you haven't come in a week," or, "I haven't talked to you in a week." And
How do you deal with that? Like, both of you, how do you deal? Because I think a lot of people out there probably who are onlys understand that. How do you deal with when you know that they're probably lonely? How do you deal with, like, the guilt?
I think, again, it comes down to boundaries because if I don't protect time with my family, it's a slippery slope. Everything kind of feels like a slippery slope, I guess, in my world. So if I don't protect the boundaries, my parents are going to be asking for, like, you give them a little bit, but they're going to take it a mile. And that's not a bad thing. I don't want to say that. And like, my parents do listen to this podcast and I don't want them to feel like, oh, we're asking too much or we're a burden. Like, that's not it at all. But more is more is more. Right. And so my parents and I have had to actually really work on, we've used the word insatiable, right? Is it ever enough? Is what I can give them ever enough? And we've had very honest conversations about that in terms of time, in terms of capacity, in terms of actually, how can I be there for them and caregive for them and also have a career and also parent and also have a marriage because otherwise they'd want me to be there all the time, which is awesome, but like I can't do that. So the only solution in my mind is to set healthy boundaries or try to with everyone. And sometimes it does mean that everyone has to find some radical acceptance there, right? Like
So you're
they
having
have to too.
conversations.
Definitely having
And you too,
conversations.
Melissa, you've probably had to have some
So
hard
mine
conversations.
actually, I have the opposite. So my mom is very much the stereotype of the Jewish mother, where I don't know if you've heard the joke, like, how many Jewish moms does it take to change a light bulb? Just one. I'll just sit here. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I'll sit in the dark. I can change it myself. If I need to be in the dark, it's just fine. So, like, we are like having the opposite problem where
But that's
you
actually
need
the
to
same
say,
because it's martyrdom or whatever. It's the
it is,
same, it's
yes.
still a source
And,
of guilt. It's just a different
it
tactic.
is like a perfect example would be, she fell in October and, I don't have time to go to the doctor. I'm okay. My elbow is fine. Well, it was fractured. And she had been sitting with a fractured arm since
Jeez.
October. And the thing is my dad was the caretaker. My dad would have put her in the car and driven her to the hospital, right? And I am not going to do that. Like, you're 73 years old. If your arm hurts, I'm not going to fight with you to take you to the doctor. Like, if you want to go, I will take you. I'm happy to do whatever you need. And I will say, I don't know how I could possibly be living in the situation without a flexible job. So I'm a teacher and I used to be in the classroom and, I would be gone from 7:30 to 4:30 and there's no flexibility. I flex my hours now constantly because last week her MRI was at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night for her arm, but my daughter had an orthodontist appointment that morning. And so it's honestly, I feel like it's more us saying, you don't need to be a martyr. You don't need to do this on your own. Because she'll say, you're so busy. You don't have time. Like,
Mm.
I don't want to burden you. Like, it's going to be too much of a hassle. And so my boundary has not been, I think, setting time. It's been fighting with her to give her time. I think a huge amount of the last 2 years has been me trying to get my mom to tell me and articulate with me specifically what she needs, because I think, in this only child dynamic, like her and my dad had this language and they did everything and they had their systems and they had everything figured out. And the boundary that I set of not being in that means I also am not clued in on like how you used to do things. And so I have had to work really hard to be able to get her to be comfortable to say to me, I need this. Can you help me with this?
Mm.
Yes.
Totally makes sense.
And
Yep.
I actually think this is like a really good segue to something else that I really want to talk about with both of you because you're both very close to me. And something that I admire about both of you is that you are actually amazing villagers. And I ask myself, like, is this because you're an only child? And what I mean by that is I am privy to seeing both of you up close and being a part of both of your villages, which I think is one of the best gifts in life to have a village. And I think it's always a work in progress. But both of you have built a community around you of people. It's a mix of friends and colleagues and neighbors that just come around to support you. And I think it's so interesting because even though you're onlys, I don't know if it's something you learn being an only to actually ask for help and to recognize like it's not going to come from your own house and it's not going to come unless you ask for it. But I would love for you guys to talk about how you think you built your village and how you think you continue to build that village and what it means to you.
I think for me, it started from a very young age. And I grew up in a neighborhood that had a lot of kids my age and a lot of families who I connected with, I guess. And as an only child, I never felt lonely. Maybe I just didn't know any different, but I was never lacking. I had very loving parents, but also my dad was working. He worked many different shifts. And, my mom did kind of different things in and out of the house. And I also have a childhood best friend, probably very similar to you two, and we're still very close. We still stay in touch. But I had these friends in our neighborhood, and I have always had really strong friendships, sometimes closer than familial relationships. And I do think that that comes from being an only child. I always did my own thing. I don't know, like it just, but a lot of that came with building friendships and being with my friends' families quite a bit. I'd have dinners and play dates and family vacations and the whole kit and caboodle with my friends' families. And my family did that too, right? But I think my village has been built very organically because I chose to only surround myself with good people. And so I've had wonderful friendships that have been very supportive over the years. And then that's kind of flowed over to work. And Minneapolis is a very small town city. But I do think that my friendships really mattered because I didn't have a sibling, right?
Mhm.
So it was like I really had
Invested in them.
strong, invested friendships. Yeah.
What do you think, Melissa?
My experience was really different, actually.
I love that. Like, I love that we have
Yeah.
two very different stories.
Yeah. So my parents were not like super social all the time. And I think that's been part of this whole shifting dynamic is like they were a lot of each other's social outlet or activity partner. And so I think it was twofold. They made a very strong effort to make sure that like I had access to like, other kids sending me to overnight camp, making sure that I was in activities, but I did not have like a neighborhood group that I hung out with. I did not cousins that I was close with, but like not a huge family. And so I think a lot of that cultivating of community has been really done intentionally by me because feeling lonely as an only child. I did feel lonely. I did feel, jealous of people that had like kind of the built in sibling playmate. Robin being one of them, they would let me bring friends on vacation. My friends became a huge source for me and like kind of really important to me because I didn't have that built in my house. So I think my parents provided me things. And also, I made a very strong effort with that because there wasn't someone in my house and we didn't have people in the house all the time. And it's funny because now that I'm raising an only child, my
Yeah.
husband and I are making a very strong point to do vacations with other families. Like we travel with them.
And your house is always full of people.
We always have people over and always have things going on because I want her to feel like she is being raised in a village. And I did not necessarily feel that way. I think I really needed to build that, or my parents did external things to add that, but it wasn't necessarily like in my home.
Sure. That is one thing
Yeah.
I will say that my parents did do is my mom ran an in-house daycare for a number of years, and she had Girl Scouts, like, at our house, at a lot of sleepovers at our house. So it did feel full because it felt like something was always happening at our house. But we were just talking about that because that's kind of been an area of conflict for my mom and I, where a lot of our family's life is, yes, it's at our home, but we're running to activities and we're out doing things. And she was kind of like, oh, I just realized that, yes, it was a slower time in the world, but everything was kind of in our home. I also didn't really have cousins that were close in age or close in proximity. So the cousin dynamic was out for me too. But yeah, the friend thing held strong for sure.
When I think about how you both do it, I think it is a combination of like reaching out, being vulnerable yourselves, even little things like, can I bring over a meal? What can I do? Melissa came with me when my mom went to the hospital one day and she just dropped what she was doing and she came with me because she's a villager and she knew how important that was, even though I was like, no, 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 I don't need that. I don't need that. But she's like, but I'm right here. And I called her. And the amount of times that Eliesa and I have reached out and talked in difficult moments and she's checked on me. So I just think you guys are doing it right. And I think as an only, it's just like a really important part of the journey to talk about. So thank you guys for talking about that.
I feel like there's been a lack of guidance from the professionals in my experience that has made it tricky to be an only child because I've had to find my way through so many different hoops that have taken so much time. And that energy has been the most exhausting energy. And then I'll hear from somebody else like, oh, yeah, a social worker popped in and told me this. And I was like, what? I was on the phone for like 5 days with interns trying to figure that out because there wasn't a social worker. Every experience is really, really different. And if the village of professionals show up, and with that, it made it easier. But there's things that I also didn't think that like our family could afford or just programs we didn't know about along the way too. And I come from a very do-it-yourself family. I think that's a Midwestern, I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness of ours, but asking for professional help, I guess I should say, didn't feel like the normal response.
Mm.
I kind of felt like, oh, yeah, I can figure this out. I got this. But in reality, especially from making this podcast and learning what resources are out there, I should have made some calls, to other people instead of going directly to the source because there could have been a lot of support from professionals along the way that I just didn't think we could afford really. It kind of came down to money.
And that is what I ended up doing. So
Melissa's
wanted to go to
actually
the
really good at
hospital.
that. She's really good at that's like one thing I've always, always like watched about Melissa. And her dad was a lawyer, but I feel like she's very resourceful and she always finds professional help. That's kind of like what she does. And it can be costly, but I feel like in the end, you've saved yourself money and agony because you always know, like you somehow always know where to go for help and you're not afraid to ask for it.
I think I'm a teacher and I think, I believe knowledge is power. And so I would much rather reach out and lean into the experts that have experience with that and then make a gut decision from there. And so my dad went into ICU on Friday night. I came home Saturday morning and was like, I don't know what to do here. And it's just me. We don't have cemetery plots. I don't have a funeral. I don't have I don't know how to do any of this. I have no siblings that are going to help me. My mom is obviously a total mess. And so I literally just picked up the phone and called our synagogue. And I was like, you guys do this. I don't even know what to do. And asked for a first step. And then, when we realized that there was going to be a funeral, a friend of mine has worked in nursing homes for a long time. I just called her and I was like, I don't know. How much does a funeral even cost? Like, I have no idea. How much is a cemetery plot? How much is any of this? And so do we need to take money out of savings? I think I just made some initial phone calls to people that have experience in those areas to ask me to give me some direction because as the only, con, there's no one to help me, right? Pro, I also don't need to debate with anybody. And
Correct.
I don't need to negotiate with anyone. And I don't need to say, is it okay if we call this person? How do you feel about this? So I just fucking did it.
Yes, you
I
did.
literally
Yes, you
just
did.
went and sat on the deck and I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I just need to call. And so how do I plan a funeral? I think that's kind of where the village concept comes from is it's like, there was never a question of, well, is it me or you or who is going to do this or right. There's never any hesitancy about like what is going to happen because it has to be you. And so, I think that's where from a very young age started building a village, right? Is like, it's me. Like I want to have kids around. I want to have Shabbat dinners with lots of people. And if I want to have these things, I need to be the one to call, and I need to be one to do these things, because I can't wait for a sibling to do it, or I can't wait for someone
Right.
else's opinion. It has to be me.
So that's also a theme I keep hearing. Like there's a gift, a hidden gift in being an only. And it is motivating to understand that like it's up to me. And I don't have time to sit in my feelings or blame someone else or wait for the angel to come. Like I need to do this and I need to do it now because it's all up to me, which can be a lot of pressure, but it does make you extremely accomplished and efficient, you know.
I think one of the best messages that my parents raised me with was that I could do whatever I wanted. There wasn't this pressure to be a professional or be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. They were like, if you like art, like you go do what you want to do, you know? And they've always given me the freedom to be whoever I want to be, which I've always felt very grateful for. Uh, but I've always felt like I am the only one who's going to make things happen for
It's
myself. I've always felt empowered, even from a very young age. A lot of people in my career as being a photographer, they do deal with a lot of guilt or pressure from family, specifically parents, on like, well, if you're going to be an artist, you're not going to make it, or like, you'll never be good enough to do something like that, you know? I never had that messaging, and that coupled with being an only has always felt like, yeah, I can do whatever I want to do. I have to work for it. I have to work my ass off for it because no one's going to hand this to me. It's just me. I'm not going to wait. I can't wait for anyone. I can't run this by anyone. I just got to like make my decisions. And so I think like going into caregiving, you know, whether it's been my career, my relationships, my building my family, like it's always been me asking myself, like, what do you want? Right. And then kind of building it from there, which I've always felt very grateful for. But when it comes to caregiving, that has aspect of being an only has been both empowering and also probably like got me into tricky situations because I felt I can do it all. Where Mel, what I'm hearing from you is like, because it's me, I'm going to ask for help. Because I'm the only one, I'm going to ask for help. And that is, I could use more of that advice.
And it's interesting. I've never really thought about it before, but that is definitely how I have approached, I think, my job, choosing a partner in life, where I want to live, what kind of life I want to build. Like I did, this is when we do have the exact same experience. I had the exact same experience as you. My parents have always been the most incredible support, have encouraged me in whatever I wanted to do, have always told me how proud they are of me, have never discouraged me from anything or any decision that I've wanted to make. And I think coupled with that and what you said, Robin, like there's not someone else to blame. There's not someone else to share the limelight with. There's not somebody else to, lean on. Like it is just me. And so I think I would completely agree with you. I think the experience of how my parents raised me and then also having to be me has also been a true gift.
It sounds like you also really know yourself and you're like steadfast and grounded in your decisions. And I think I would feel that way too.
I think you're
Yeah.
both like that. I don't know. I mean, you guys are pretty kick-ass ladies. I don't know. The only thing kind of seems awesome to me.
Well, I will tell you though, having an only child, like because I did not love being, as you heard, like I did not love being an only child growing up. And my parents will tell you, I said that quite often. Like I felt lonely and that like I really would build friends around me all the time because I just wanted that. I loved going to sleepaway camp because I'd be surrounded in a cabin with kids all the time. And I did not choose to have an only child. I couldn't have any more kids. And so when I found out I was then going to parent an only child, I was like, how can I make this an experience where I don't want her to have feelings of loneliness or regret that maybe I did? And there's only one book that I could find that had a pro. All the other ones had this negative leaning.
Huh.
And a friend of mine gave it to me. It's called One and Only. And it like is actually all the science about like there's good and bad to every situation. And, certain positive personality traits come out of being an only child too.
Yeah.
Just like being a middle or a younger or an older, right? Like it's just how you harness those skill sets. So we definitely need more, I think, research and positivity around it, because I think that there is a skewed thing where, the selfish, like wanting the limelight, like those kinds of stereotypes still exist.
Well, and as you said, that just like the number of people being sandwiched is growing because people are having children later in life, the amount of onlys is growing because of the same reason. People are
Totally.
meeting later. We talk a lot about how we met our spouses later in life and started having children later in life. And part of that story is people having onlys. So I think, or they're having onlys because of financial restraints or whatever. So I think that's like a really interesting
There's
angle.
we have 2 children, but there's a 5-year age gap between them. And for a long time, we thought that Florence would be an only child, and for various reasons. And so we would always have conversations about, like, you are enough. Like, you are absolutely enough. And our family is complete, and we feel very content. And that changed. And actually, she called me out on it one day. She was like, I think it was, early on in newborn days with her sister now, that she was like, but you always told me that I was enough. I was like, you still are.
Kids are so good at using your words. I brought Peyton up to constantly say, like, your body, your choice. And oh my God, has that bit me in the butt? Well, I
Yeah,
don't need to shower because it's my body, my choice. Well, I don't need to brush my teeth because it's my body, my choice. I was like, man, when they're little, you have to be very careful what you say.
I know. I know. But
Okay,
I
I
do
have
agree that only children are enough. I do agree.
I have to ask, what did you throw at your mom? Do you remember what you threw?
To go and ask her what it
Like,
was.
what did she say to you right before you threw the thing? And that's what I've been wanting to know. Like, what
Okay,
did she say?
so we were, yeah, and keep in mind, my dad is hooked up on all these machines. We're in ICU, like he's breathing on a tube, right? I mean, we're talking the intensity of intensive experiences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And God, what? I'm like, she says to me, she's upset with me about something because, we were up all throughout the night texting each other, like, because we were not sleeping, right? We'd go home for a few hours and we're communicating. And something that I text her, she didn't like a word that I said. And I was like, you're harboring on one word. And we're in this like dramatic situation. And I feel like it was a book. I know I brought a book with me that was like a meditation book to be like, while I'm sitting in here, I can like read these meditations. And I threw the meditation book across the hospital room. The irony of that is like so ridiculous. And then I literally get down on my hands and knees and I was like, let go the one word we're talking about. Like, we are in a life and death. We need to figure this out. And she's upset. And then literally machines start digging. And the like people come in and they're like, you're agitating the patients. We're going to need you to quiet down.
Oh my God, I love that you threw a meditation book.
I
That's
threw a
fucking
meditation book across
perfect.
the hospital room.
That's amazing.
Like over my dad's body while he's like on ventilation. I am going to ask my mom though to verify see if she remembers it. It's funny.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is amazing. Okay.
So I love you.
Thank you guys for
Oh,
having
so
me. I
much.
love you guys too.
Thank you for
having
being on
me.
this was
here.
such a
I
good
hope that this was
conversation.
helpful.
Yes, this was amazing.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. You're amazing. I
Thank
love
you.
you. I love you.
Thank you guys.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you can take away some helpful info and tips. All links and resources can be found in our show notes.
Please share this episode with anyone you think this might help. And if you have a topic that you'd like to talk more with us about in the sandwich generation world, please slide into our DMs on Instagram. Our handle is @thesandwichgenerationpod. We hope you'll be back for more convos with us soon. And remember, no matter whose diaper you're changing, you're never alone.
That was great. That was really good. All right.